Good afternoon. We will call our PCMS meeting together right now, and what we're going to do is have Ms. Nage lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good afternoon, everyone. We have one action item on the agenda today. May I have a motion to approve the minutes from the April 18th, 2024 meeting?
So move.
Second? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? We now have informational items, and we will have Mr. Stivers come and present his informational items to the committee.
Good afternoon, everybody. It would help, sorry about that. Good afternoon. This is for the Pinellas County, Pinellas Core Management Services. It's a separate 501c3 nonprofit corporation. And Bree, if you'll pull up the financial there. There is a lot of history in the past, so I'm told, with PCMS is the acronym, and it was been used in the past for pass-through grants that JWB would match fund, knowing that there would be other funding that would become and even maybe completely match the funding that JWB gave. So in the past, there's been a really good use for that, for those purposes, and I think there were even other purposes that some of the historians around here could provide to you. Bree, if you will go down to the tax form 2023, there you go. The corporation has $88,473 in assets. That's basically an unrestricted fund balance. And those were the assets. It does not have any liabilities. Bree, if you'll go down a little bit further. So total liabilities and net assets is the $88,000. So that's a pretty simple statement. Bree, if you'll go down a little bit further. This is the income statement. It had interest income last year of $45. And its expenses, its expenses was $5,242. Those expenses are for insurance. Those expenses are for filing fees, and that's pretty much the extent of the expenses. So it had a beginning fund balance, and then you back out the expenses, and that leaves you the $88,000. So I feel like in the future, this is an entity for keeping alive for this purpose. Hopefully to have other grant opportunities or other opportunities in general where it makes sense to use a 501c3 like this. And any questions? This concludes what I know to say about PCMS. Beth or Karen, I know have more history about it.
Well, no, but I was, you're going to look at the 990 as well?
Yes,
okay.
It's on there. She was going to come down. You don't have the 990 is in front of you. It's at your desk there. The overview of the financial statements was what we organized there on the screen. However, it's exactly what's in front of you, and this is the 990. This is the public tax form that goes out and is viewable when you can status that. There's a website, I don't remember the name off the top of my head, that nonprofits file these. It shows the $45 in revenue versus the $5,200 in expenses for the $88,000 in the fund balance. So that is the tax return that it files.
Any questions for Robbie for this? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions in general for the PCMS meeting? If not, I will move to adjourn. Next, we will roll over into our JWB official board meeting, so I will call that to order right now, and I just want to make a comment that we do have a revision. It is a slight revision. It's up under acknowledgements. We did add the Kids First Cooperman Bogue Award, and Ms. Bogus will lead us with that.
Good afternoon, Karen Bogus, Chief Operating Officer, and I have the absolute honor and pleasure today to talk and speak about our first Kids First awardee. The Juvenile Welfare Board believes those who work to give children brighter futures deserve recognition. Today, we are honoring our newest Kids First awardee, an outstanding out-of-school time professional who is goes consistently above and beyond to put children first. So please stand, Paul Kleeman. And I'm going to be saying a few words about you, so just hang on. You can. And first and foremost, I want to say thank you for your service to our country. He served in the Air Force, so thank you. So Paul is a tutor at the Clearwater Parks and Recreation out-of-school time program, but he's also so much more than that. For many of the kids in the program, Paul is their school dad. Wearing many hats, teacher, coach, motivator, and trusted advisor, Paul has impacted hundreds of children across Pinellas County, offering them guidance, structure, mentorship, and unwavering support. And he came to the program volunteering for 6 weeks, and 6 years later, he is still there. Paul has created a thriving, success-driven learning environment by recognizing each student's habits, strengths, and challenges. He works one-on-one with his kids, equipping them with the skills to focus, analyze their curriculum, and make informed decisions about academics, life choices, goals, and much more. His dedication extends beyond the school year. Recognizing the academic setbacks many children face over the summer, Paul took the initiative to develop a 10-week summer academic program, providing targeted math and reading lessons to students at risk of falling behind. And thanks to his efforts, many students returned to school ahead of their peers, better prepared for success. Paul's influence is long-lasting. His former students often return to check in, and one of the first things they ask is, "How is Mr. Paul? We miss him so much." One such student, now a published author, recently shared that without Paul's guidance, he might not have graduated or reached the level of success he has today. So please join us in congratulating JWB's remarkable Kids First awardee, Paul Kleeman. Would you like to say anything?
No, for your sake.
And I know he wants to get back to the program because he's got some kids to provide services for. So thank you so much, Paul.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you to all of you. Thank you for your time and effort. It really is appreciated, and she's fantastic.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Can I have a motion for acceptance of the consent items?
So move.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Next, we will go to our action items, and Ms. Bogus is staying there. She will do the approval of the community council appointment.
Yes, good afternoon. So today I stand before you asking for approval for an applicant for South County Community Council. He is not able to be here today. Athian Ronnie Early. Mr. Early has been with the City of St. Petersburg Parks and Recreation since 2003 and currently serves as a supervisor for the Tasco-centered teen programs. He's a dedicated advocate for the community with strong focus on promoting equitable access to youth programs and opportunities. Since 2017, Mr. Early has attended the South County Community Council as a guest, sharing valuable information about Tasco and offering support to council members with various needs related to St. Petersburg recreation centers. Additionally, he is a former educator with Pinellas County Schools, having taught from 2003 to 2013. He's happily married to his wonderful wife for 21 years and is the proud father of 4 beautiful children. Any questions?
If I can get a motion to accept his appointment? All in favor? Any opposed? Tell him we said congratulations.
I will. Thank you very much.
Next, we do have the approval for a bylaw amendment by Ms. Flynn.
Hello, thank you. Item, I guess it's 4B now, for under the action items. Periodically, we do review the bylaws to see what changes we might need to make, whether it's just operationally or if there's anything legally that's changed. This year, we have 2 proposed amendments that were sent out 10 days in advance, as is required by the bylaws. The first one is a change to when the board adopts its meeting schedule. The bylaws have said that the board will adopt it at the September board meeting, but as you can all attest to, it's been a struggle, especially with the county commission isn't setting its meetings till January. And so rather than having those charts with the checks and Olivia calling all of you and trying to reschedule after they've been scheduled for 6 months, we thought that it would be best to delete that portion from the bylaws, therefore you can set them whenever you see fit. If you see fit to set them quarterly, from September to December, and then redo it in January, whatever you like. It will make it much easier for you guys if we have some flexibility in the bylaws. So that's the first change. The second change was a proposal to bring JWB in line with Pinellas County and the city of Clearwater regarding appointing or removing the CEO. Our bylaws currently require a vote of 7 to either appoint or fire. The change would keep that a 7-member vote at one meeting, or just like the city and the county, you could have a majority of 6, provided you did it at 2 consecutive meetings. So it just gives you flexibility, and since we only have 10 board members right now and we consistently get 6 at meetings, this would allow the board more flexibility. Those are the 2 proposals suggested, so if anybody has any questions, please let me know.
Any questions or comments for Ms. Flynn? Do I have a motion?
Second?
All in favor? Any opposed? Thank you. And we're moving right along. We're going to our presentations now. We have the 5-year forecast and the FY26 funding parameters by Mr. Stivers.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Welcome. Before you is the forecast for the FY26 fiscal year. So we're premature in getting this out, but the reason we do that is because of agency allocations. And the first part of May, we'll send out letters to our agencies for them to begin to build their budgets and know what preliminary allocation that they can build their budget on, or their spending plan on in their budget. And we do that so they can get that to us, and then certainly JWB will have the opportunity to vet it. And then once we get to the approval of the final budget and the final millage rates, et cetera, then those budgets are locked in. Obviously, anytime in between, that can change. And I'm running this. So the purpose of this is do exactly what I said with the allocation letters. The preparation of the 26 budget also requires guidance, and we're looking for guidance from not only the Finance Committee, but certainly from this board in how we prepare our budget for future meetings going forward, particularly as we get closer to finalizing the budget. The forecast purpose is to understand what today's decisions and how it impacts not only today's children, but it also impacts tomorrow and next year's budgets and subsequent budgets going forward. And there is, you'll see a relation to that as we go through this. We also want to identify any long-term discrepancies that we have. You know, we've talked about fund balance a lot. We've had really good progress in that regard, which we'll talk about. The timeline, obviously today is for this presentation. The Finance Committee met just prior to this. Those allocation letters on the May 2nd there will be going out sooner than we know, and we want to make sure those allocation are at least within the realm of what environment and funding capacities that the board will entertain approving. Millage rate, we've talked a lot about millage rate in the past, and here I'm saying this, I've been here 10 months, but in my meetings that I've had here, I know that there is a focus on millage rate, as it should be. In 23, the millage rate was dropped to 0.85. That was the first in 10 years. And in FY24, it was dropped to 0.82, which is the second time, I think maybe the second time that that's ever happened in JWB in 35 years. So two 2 consecutive years with a drop. In '25, we maintained the .82 millage rate. And in this year's budget, in FY '26, and be mindful we're planning for next year, we're building the budget on the .82, and certainly any guidance that this body will provide, we'll certainly make those adjustments. The millage rate, as I talked about, at .82, certainly we feel like that on that millage rate for FY '26, it allows us to maintain not only the continued required fund balance that we need to have. It's about $33 million. That's 25% of our budget. And it allows for things that are unknown in the future, hurricane events or other kind of catastrophic events that would have an impact on our funding. It also promotes stability to have those reserves in hand. This budget, based on the millage rate, includes a cost of living increase for our agencies as well as JWB. The agency COLAs, as they're referred to, we'll get into this further, but it's about $2.5 million. That's reoccurring money. And the 3.8% COLA for JWB is a little less than $250,000. And that would be predominantly for increases in cost of living increases for salaries. This budget also includes a capital RFA. Money's being budgeted of $2.5 million. Last year, we budgeted a little over $5 million. We only spent about $3.8 million of that $5 million. Historically, a few years back, I think on average it was $1 million or so, maybe $1.5 million, but we feel like the 2.5 is doable this year. In subsequent years, as you can see on your budget sheet that I'll show you in a minute, it decreases some. This is a lot to look at, and Bree, if you can kind of stretch my boundaries again there to make it a little more visible. While she's doing that, if you look on your table in front of you, go up a little bit, perfect. The blue columns, the FY '26, obviously. Total net revenues, they've gone up about $5.1 million, and we were able to do that because of the property assessed value had increased. Be mindful, too, that the collection rate that we used, and this is, you know, we don't budget on 100% because the county usually doesn't achieve that, although they'd like to. In the past, we budgeted about 97%. It has dropped a little bit over the years, and we felt like an adjustment at 96 was necessary. Arguably, we could have gone a little bit lower, but we felt like 96 is representative. So that $113 million figure there is based on 96% of what we think we will receive. And I'll break down just quickly the liabilities. If you go to the, or the expenses, as you go to the bottom, we have a roll-up of the expenses of $133 million right there. And that's different from $132 million from a year ago, and that's almost a $500,000 increase. And the breakdown of that is the big figure here, the $112 million. That's where we reimburse agencies. That's where the cash leaves the door of JWB when agencies file for reimbursements. That is compliant with their contracts. That is compliant with some of the other outcomes that we're investing in. And we keep an eye on that, obviously, almost on a daily basis. Also, I want to mention the administrative costs up here. They've gone up a little over $400,000. That's JWB expenditures. That's running at about 8% of our budget with a target guideline in the budget to be about 10%. Consistently, JWB has been able to maintain that 8% level, which is commendable. The $2,001,000 there are for the COLAs, and that's for the agency COLAs. The $250,000 that I talked to for the COLA for JWB is a little less than $250,000 as included in the budget figure there. The $1.5 million here that's just below there, right there, that is agencies, and there's about 7 or 8 of them that we have been working with due to lapse. We have been working with about outcomes and things like that we may need to adjust. And in our May board meeting, we'll give a presentation on making adjustments to their budget allocation and/or non-renewing maybe a couple of the contracts. But we'll have more to follow on that as we get into that, but that is budgeted for there. And then the $2.5 million just below it is for the capital RFA. And that's what we've been able to feel like we can reasonably put forward this year in order to invest in agencies, not only for deferred maintenance, but for improving their space where it's more appealing to and usable for the agencies and their participants. So that explains just at a high level the increase that nets out of about $500,000 in expenses over last year expenses. Going pretty quick. Any questions on that anybody have? Okay. I will continue on. So if you come down to the bottom line on the surplus or loss, as you can see, we're running about a $5.7 million loss from net revenues minus our expenses. So why do we do that? Well, we do that because we anticipate lapse. There's lapse that we have forecasted for next year of about $11 million. And that is systemic to our operation. Certainly lapse is going to occur with our agencies for position vacancies to newer programs and being able to stabilize those programs, et cetera. So we factored all that in knowing that we're going to have the lapse, and that will either offset part of the loss or we have an unassigned fund balance, which is there right here, unassigned fund balance of it's approximately $6.8 million. And that's money that is available. As you look out into future years, you'll see that unassigned go down because of inflation and at least what we're able to forecast now based on property revenues. That loss, we won't always be able to sustain in fund balance. So at some point, we'll have to look to see in different ways how we can really right size our budget based on our revenues, net revenues that we get versus what we spend out of it. It's critically important as that fund balance decreases. Lapse also has a impact on that. And we'll have another slide in here that talks about that we're ahead on decreasing lapse, spending today's dollars on today's kids. So that's the objective there. And as it shrinks, it will also put us in a position if we have losses that even take more from fund balance. So we need to be careful as we move forward with that. Questions? Okay. Funding parameters, and this is related to the decreased property values as you can see on your screen. Currently, the assessed value, the inflation percentage is roughly 5.6. The prior year was about 6.7. There's a 1.1% decrease in property values. In FY 26 or 27, 28, 29, those are historical analysis that may or may not be accurate. I mean, we don't know what those years will hold, but there's kind of an estimate on what we think. We think overall it will be positive for this county going forward as historically it's been. This is a really good slide that you all have seen in the past, but I thought is very relevant to the times that we have before us today. And in 07, this was the ad valorem and the rate of inflation. It took us almost to FY 25, or it took us to them, if you adjust the ad valorem for inflation, to catch up from where we were back in 07. If we get into more inflated times, or we get into difficult times that maybe even really leads to a recession, those type things, as you can see, the climb back is extensive. It takes years to do that. Revenue and fund balance considerations, as I indicated earlier, we had a goal last year of about 15%. We achieved about 12.5%. That was a board directive. That's something that JWB took very seriously, and we continue to tighten up. We continue to do the analysis with our agencies and pulling back lapse and those type things. And as you can see, we had really, really positive results there. Revenue and fund balance considerations. As we move forward, the unassigned fund balance is roughly in 26 projected at about 5%. In future years, it continues to go down, and I think it will do that, especially as we deal with some of the economic pressures that seem to be shaping up at this point. So be mindful of that as it goes forward. Look on your sheet there, as you can see, as it goes down, the unassigned actually gets down to almost nothing after FY '28. So revenues are very important to us at this point. And if we need to adjust our spending plan, we have a lot of different options to do that, and we can certainly consider and move forward as the board so desires us to do so. The FY '26 and '31 strategic plan, the 5-year plan that we're embarking upon, this year's budget allocates about $638,000 towards that. Predominantly, we don't know what that strategic plan is yet, but we want to have money to do things we think will be around the 0 to 3 initiatives. In out years, we are budgeting about $2.2 million in revenue to do new and expanded programs. A comparison to the last 5 years, or the current year, I guess last year we're in, of the strategic plan, we've been able to allocate about $4 million. So there is a difference in spending for new and expanded programs. That can change at any time during the year. Certainly, as we receive revenues or out years of revenue, that can have an impact on that, and will have an impact on that. So we'll continue to watch that. Budget recommendations to move forward with a COLA of 3.8%. That's not an arbitrary figure. The state, at least the Senate on the state, is looking for FY '26 to be around 4%. I think the House has a different opinion of that. I'm not for sure they're going to go along with that. So we'll see how all that shakes out for FY '26 at the state. If you look at the CPI, the last one we looked at was about 2.8%. That's a national rate. We just got new data today that shows that's gone down a little bit, and the justification is for gas prices of about 2.4%. So it is moving down. The explanation they gave was the decline in fuel prices, gasoline, consumer gasoline prices. So it seems to me like that's very prematurely low, especially for this county and especially this day and time. And we're hearing all these pressures about these unknowns, and tariffs will have an impact on inflation one way or the other. I don't think that's a question. Prudently, going forward, we always budget for positions. In FY '26, we budgeted for 1 position. We don't have a position in mind for that. We don't have to fund that position or fill that position. Obviously, we feel it, we've got to fund it. But I think it's proactive to do that because we will be in the first year of our new strategic plan. It would be anticipated as new programs come along, we may need other kinds of support in order to support and administer those programs. In the out years, as just a placeholder, we've looked at, we've plugged in 2 positions as we go forward. That doesn't mean we'll fill those positions at all, and it would certainly be up to this body to decide that. Cost of living increases for our agencies. The 3.8 is about $2.5 million. That's recurring money, as it is with the administrative costs for JWB. But it certainly helps them keep up, as I mentioned, with keeping positions filled, paying competitive rates that do that, as well as keeping their facilities and programs up and running like they need to be, and covering those costs of inflation. The RFA, the last bullet point there, and that's for the capital stuff. You can certainly defer capital maintenance as long as you want to, but in some point you will pay for it. And the longer you defer it, the bigger that price tag gets in order to do that. I think JWB with COLAs and with its capital offerings over the years has done an excellent job with helping their agencies be able to fund those deferred maintenance items. For FY '26, we plugged in $2.5 million. Felt like that's doable this year. In subsequent years, it's about $1.5 million. Still a little bit better than historically that it's been, but nonetheless, we think is important to our agencies. That's a really quick overview. That's a lot of stuff I covered in a short amount of time, but I'm glad to answer questions or any other guidance or comments. I'd be certainly interested in hearing those.
Robbie, I'm just impressed on how you basically used every word you used at the Finance Committee meeting without a miss. Yeah. So I congratulate you on your preparation.
Thank you. I've had a lot of help.
Thank you, Robbie. We appreciate you.
Thank you.
Next, we will go to our CEO report by Ms. Houghton. I'm sorry, Children's Mental Health. I am so sorry. Forgive me.
Good afternoon, Becky Aubert, Director of Strategic Initiatives here at JWB. So today I'm going to inform you about Children's Mental Health Initiative the progress that we've made over the last 5 years, followed by actionable items, which will take us through the development of JWB's next strategic plan. So our Children's Mental Health Initiative was really designed to better meet the needs of children and their families. We have 5 cross-sector design teams that work to develop actionable items and move us closer toward achieving the shared vision. So we listened to the experiences of youth and families. We worked with experts in the field to learn what they were seeing. We needed to increase access to care. But how are we going to measure the success at the patient level or the individual level? What effect are the services having on children who are receiving them? And overall, at the system level? And finally, what role might other entities play, such as managing entities, insurance companies, to increase reimbursement and ultimately grow the initiative? We conducted parent and caregiver focus groups throughout Pinellas County. We administered youth surveys. What we learned is that parents didn't know where to go for help. They don't ask for help because they fear what others may think, and they question themselves of, what did I do wrong? Youth are often misunderstood. They don't feel like they can have conversations with their parents or caregivers, and they're often treated like children, but expected to act like adults. So based on this information that we gathered, JWB responded by creating some collateral materials, including resource guides that helped parents and caregivers identify local resources and get connected more easily. We created gratitude journals for youth and young adults so that they could reflect on some of the things that they may be feeling or experiencing. And we also created activity booklets for the younger preschool-age children. We partnered with Pinellas County government, and we came up with common contractual language so that the deliverables from our behavioral health community providers aligned with other funders so that we could better understand the capacity within our community to serve and meet the needs of children and their families, as well as contribute to the Care About Me model, which is a centralized space that you can call, text, chat, go online, and someone will do a screening and be able to get you connected to the services that you need based on insurance type, based on location, based on preference, and then be able to ensure that you actually got linked to the service. We held more than 200 town halls and other community events, reaching over 10,000 residents to really share the experiences, stories from youth, hearing from them about some of the effective strategies that they've used, for example, with social media, how to create healthy boundaries and spaces, how to ensure that they're taking care of themselves, how to stay connected with your community. Our workforce design team focused on increasing the skill set of professionals. So we brought in the Reach Institute that would train pediatricians and other medical staff from various organizations throughout Pinellas County so that they could become better equipped at identifying, diagnosing, and treating low to moderate mental health conditions such as anxiety and depression. We offered motivational interviewing trainings to clinical and non-clinical professionals so that they could better support individuals who may be stuck or repeating behaviors that are unhealthy. We offered trauma-focused cognitive behavioral therapy certification, 2 cohorts so far to licensed clinicians so that they could more effectively respond to the needs of children who have experienced trauma, whether that's abuse, neglect, or from natural disasters. we are building a skilled and engaged workforce. So we're continuing to see a steady increase in the number of children that have been supported by the integration of mental health and support services within their pediatric practice over the last 5 years. So this really came out of the care coordination design team. And we're ultimately reducing the number of children who are having to be referred outside of their pediatric practice because the physicians are now better equipped to manage internally. We also have counseling services and other support services to walk alongside the family when they're in their pediatric practice. So the gray line at the top is the total number of unique children served over the course of 5 years, beginning with fiscal year 20 through the most recent year of fiscal year 24. The line below that, the orange line, is the number of children screened for early detection and intervention. The yellow or gold line is the number of behavioral health visits within a pediatric practice. And the brown line at the bottom is the number of unique children who have received one or more behavioral health visits within the practices. So JWB's investment in the integration of services, so within our pediatric practices, is nearly $2.9 million. The actual amount spent in fiscal year 24 was $2.7 million. So when we think about the children who are served in some capacity within their pediatric practice, the cost on average is $163. This is just another visual representation of the children being served and the type of services or supports that they're using within the practices. So 88% of the 16,562 children were screened. 18% were supported through care coordination. So maybe it was a patient care coordinator communicating with Pinellas County Schools. It may be reaching out to another provider to get records. The 7% is the number or the percentage of children who had one or more behavioral health visits within the integrated practice. So the behavioral health visits would either be by the pediatrician who was trained by the Reach Institute and managing low to moderate mental health conditions or interpreting screening results. They could see a licensed therapist, maybe psychiatry, or psychology, which is a fairly new position within Evra Health and beginning to offer assessments for autism. It is important to note that of all the visits, nearly 10% were same-day or crisis intervention. So the demographics, you can see that more than half of the children being served are the ones that we really set out to serve with the star in the middle under age distribution. That's the 4 to 11. And why did we decide to go with 4 to 11? Well, research suggests that that's the age range when children typically go through transitions. So between the ages of 5 to 6, they enter into kindergarten, and then between the ages of 10 and 11, they enter into middle school. We know that transitions or change often exacerbate anxiety, and we also know that chronic mental health conditions are present by age 14. So our goal was really to get further upstream to better identify needs, build relationships with the families, and give them a place where they can ask for support if and when needed. So measuring the success of the initiative, what is the effect of this integration? Well, you'll notice that on the left-hand side, we have fiscal year 2018 and 2019. So this was really before the full integration. This was before the pediatricians became trained. And we took the average of kids, the percentage of kids who are being treated within the practice for ADHD, anxiety, and depression. And then we compared that with the average of the most recent 2 years, fiscal year 23 and fiscal year 24, which is after the pediatricians have become trained, after they've received the case consultation, the coaching, the peer support to better identify and support children and their families within the medical practice. And while ADHD was fairly consistent overall or saw the least amount of change, you'll notice that the anxiety and the depression rose by 140 to 135% respectively. Had the integration not have occurred, these children would have been referred outside of the practice. So we're in fiscal year 25, and 26 is going to be really the development toward JWB's next strategic plan. And so this really, the highlights are what we want to focus on. And when I say we, it's the collective we, it's the partners in the community who really inform some of the trends and the gaps that we then invest and try and bridge. So the toolkits for parents and caregivers, you know, basic, easy to use strategies for communicating with your family. Maybe getting a social media plan in the hands of parents and caregivers early before they allow their child to have a cell phone, so that the expectation of how we're going to use technology or cell phones in our home is very clear, and we're not having to, it's not becoming a battle, if you will, every day within the home. The workforce, we know now that we have we have handled the need for treating low to moderate mental health conditions. We're not hearing about access so much anymore, but what we are hearing now is the wait times and the number of children with potential developmental delays, including autism spectrum disorder. We're hearing from our early learning center staff who really need to be better equipped at understanding and supporting the family, because they spend a lot of time with the children in the child care centers. But we also need to be supporting our pediatricians and the medical practice so that they can become better equipped, like they did for the mental health conditions, but with neurodivergencies. Because what's happening is either children are being left without a diagnosis for 6 to 18 months, or they're being referred and they're still waiting, but once they get to the appropriate professionals, such as a clinical psychologist, the clinical psychologist is recognizing that this child didn't need to be referred to me, and rather, if they would have been able to ask a couple of more questions, they could have routed them a different path. So really trying to get some more education and training for our professionals so that we can hopefully reduce the gap that we're seeing in our community. The care coordination, again, we want to expand and get further upstream using today's dollars for today's children. I will say that the longer that I'm in this space, the more time that I spend, I think it is imperative that our investment happens earlier with the younger children, because if we're waiting, it's much more difficult to change behaviors and intervene. The technology piece is highlighted in a orangish red color because while we're not as far along as we had hoped, there are challenges with various providers having or using different platforms. Technology is changing so quickly, it's hard to really keep up with all of the changes. But with that being said, we have made some progress with direct secure messaging and the partnerships that have been formed across sectors. However, I hope that Technology will still be on the forefront, which takes me to the system finance. That will be an important piece as we continue to build out the infrastructure within our private pediatric practice so that they can eventually bill for services that are being delivered by licensed therapists. Any questions?
Overall, I think that, the presentation was extremely good. We appreciate it. Interesting enough to see the breakdown of the different types of children or children demographics, I guess you want to call it. Very different than we see from most other programs, correct? And I'm looking at Barbara to tell me if I'm right or wrong. But very different. I mean, you're seeing a change in who needs support or more support than others in that. Technology, I just hope you're not using the same stuff that the government used in their strategic action plan in the war. Hope you're using something different than that. But technology is going to be a critical piece of this. And AI is going to play a major role in the future of where this is heading. I don't know how you catch up to it, but it has to happen. And it has to happen now to be able to really address the values and the issues that you're trying to chase. So hopefully that can be done and the right organizations come together to do it. Mm-hmm. But thanks again.
Thank you.
Thanks for bringing that up. Just a couple of things as I reflect on this. Part of the reason that sometimes the subpopulation of children are changing by age is we're learning more about them as we go. And the old clusters don't make sense because those were based on much more limited knowledge and diagnostic understanding about where the children are. And everything in the field seems to point, almost as a general rule, the earlier you start, the better. So I think, within this strategic planning period at JWB, we put a lot of emphasis on younger children and starting early, and that makes a critical difference. I shared with Becky, I have a 35-year-old nephew who's bipolar and been a problem all his life. At 30, it was picked up that he had disorders like this. So he literally spent his whole life with some behaviors that were misdiagnosed because that consideration was never even on the table. So I think this is extremely important work and starting as far downstream as we can. And then the other thing is, as Becky mentioned, is working with families. I mean, if you look at a lot of literature now, it's starting to tell you that families recognize these problems very early. They don't know what they are and they don't know what the etiology is, but they know that there's something about their kid that's not right. And so I think even when we do things like turbo babies, building in maybe a component of turbo babies that says, does your child do this? If they do that, maybe this is something, that you ought to consider. And not blaming parents, not dismissing them, not minimizing what they see, but saying, there's probably something there, let's try to figure out together and what that should be. So all of that is moving in the right direction.
Yeah, I'm just hoping that the denial stage is much shorter than it's been.
Yes, I certainly hope so.
Thank you, Ms. Albert. Next, we will go to the CEO report by Ms. Houghton.
First, I wanted to let you know that our Family Service Initiative, FSI program, every year we struggle with budgeting for it and tracking payments and budget usage. There are some trends that seem to be the same year to year. Sometime in the winter, more people get back IRS refunds and we see a drop. And generally in the summer, we see higher needs because kids are out of school and don't have the food that they're provided at school. But other than that, the trends over the life of the program have tended to be to escape easily figuring out what's causing what, and just because the trend was what it was last year, is it going to be the same this year? And then this year, we've had an interesting year. So due largely to hurricane-related needs, our Family Service Initiative expenditures have been running higher year-to-date. Even during some of that winter time, we're used to them going down. Even then, probably it's a matter of timing, but when we used to see the impact of IRS refunds, in some cases, families were catching up on other things. They'd lost a car in the hurricanes, for instance, and so they were still behind on rent or on utilities or whatever, but they may well have used their IRS refund in part for something else. So we're watching the trends. The expenditures so far this year have definitely been running higher year-to-date than budgeted. We will come back to you as needed. I would just want to give you the preview that it would not be, it would be reasonably predictable that in May or June, we may come back requesting an increase for the program. Right after the hurricane, we lifted some of our requirements, but most of that impacted the much smaller dollars. So if you look at where do the dollars go, the big piece are rent or deposits to get people into housing, and that's always been the case. The places where we moved more quickly because we felt families needed it and they needed it then were smaller things like filling up their refrigerator again with food after power had been out, or diapers and other immediate needs for their kids, cleaning supplies, those sorts of things that are, it's not to say that that's not real money, but those are much smaller dollar amounts. So I share that with you just to sort of give you a preview that you may see that. Last month, I was pleased to attend a pretty unique wall signing event. That's Michelle Detweiler, who is CEO of Park, and me, both in hard hats. I don't think we really needed hard hats. I think they just wanted us to wear them. But what they did in a particular space was offer their major donors, and I represent you, a major donor, to Park, to put either through markers or spray paint, which I couldn't bring myself to do. Your whole life, the impact is using spray paint is vandalism. So I couldn't do it. But anyway, they're going to put Lucide or something over this. They are building a new child development center. We have supported financially the operations of that center for years and years. They do a good job. There I am. We were able in our capital RFA, I mean, we by policy don't contribute to capital campaigns. But we can through our RFA provide funds for non-real estate. So for instance, they got a fair amount of money from us for very little furniture and other equipment that they were going to use within this space. So it was a very positive day and a unique way in which to mark one of the points in building this out. Let's see, Park, just in case you don't know, serves both children and adults, but in the children's program, early learning and early intervention services for children with both intellectual and developmental disabilities. So it was a joy to be there. Let me get the right page. There we go. We have the Pinellas Fatherhood Collaborative. There you see a bunch of fathers. Recently hosted a really insightful training to improve the ability of community partners to support the fathers that are in their programs. Nearly 30 participants representing 13 organizations attended this session titled Building Stronger Programs That Value Fathers, led by a national level fatherhood consultant, Ken Scarborough, who has consulted with us through our development of our program. The collaborative is surveying its partners and meeting them with them at 1, 3, and 9-month intervals to learn how they're integrating what they've learned, what skills they've garnered, and the tools gleaned from trainings into their programs to see whether this is making a difference. JWB is nothing if not accountable. And again, it's a different approach. It's a different animal, if you will, to measure the effectiveness of collaborative efforts than it is programs. And in the last, what, Barbara, 2 years maybe, we have kind of one by one been working to provide meaningful evaluative approaches to our community-wide events, or our community-wide efforts, I should say. So this was, you know, we're now getting to fatherhood in terms of doing that. And, you know, typically we learn a lot, we tweak the systems themselves, but to do it because it looks good and feels good isn't enough. We need to know that we're making an impact. Last Saturday, the first of our 2025 Grand Families events was held at Campbell Park, planned and executed by a team of both JWB staff and our South County Community Council. Unity Day focused on the unique needs of families headed by grandparents and other related caregivers, and featured resource vendors, food, music, even free haircuts to kids. In response to, as I said before, we measure a lot of things. In response to last year's post-event surveys, JWB and our vendors offered practical resources, including non-perishable food boxes, hurricane preparation kits, hygiene items, diapers, as well as behavioral health resources and mediation activities. So we listened to what our families said they actually needed. These are well attended by assigned and additional staff from JWB. I think you're going to see next year a little bit higher grading on, now which ones do we really need to spend all day Saturday at and which ones not? We don't have a huge staff. It can be fairly exhausting. Some of these are our events and focus on issues that we've identified are important for the community. And this was one of those. But there are also events, and for good reason, there are other events led by someone else that we attend and have a table at, or pass out Turbo Babies materials. And we're evaluating which of those are really worth the effort and which are not, because we can't do everything. One thing that was, I think, referenced earlier when we were talking about the budget is that one of the key steps in our draft strategic plan process, the first that we had, was a review, was a step that was reviewing our current portfolio of funded programs. We knew we can't adopt a new strategic plan that includes new elements that respond to emerging needs and just add. We've got to be culling back some things that haven't been as effective as we expected them to be, or for whatever reason, if we were going to start all the potential new programs and some of the old programs and look at them side by side, we would have very different opinion of the impact or the impact per dollar. And so instead of waiting until, we crashed into a wall, we decided to begin looking at this process earlier. So even though we're not conducting the full strategic plan right now, there was no reason to wait to do this. So first, and some of this occurred last year, impacting the current fiscal year 25 budget, we looked at some right sizing. And by that, I primarily mean programs that had run significant laps year after year after year. And we shrunk some of those budgets to be closer to the money they'd actually spent. This year, well, first let me back up. You've heard a presentation, it's been several months now, I think, but you've heard a presentation about the 4 C's, or dividing our programs into sort of 4 levels of need for our technical assistance and our involvement. Everything from programs that have run like a top for a long time, maybe they're accredited by somebody else who goes and looks at them at least once a year, down to programs that are sort of constantly in crisis, and where audits are late, or they have significant problems with them, or targeted service levels continue not to be met. The program is staffed and budgeted to impact 100 kids, and they never seem to be able to break 50. And, we give them a year and it's still 50, and we give them a year and it's still 50. So there's been some really careful work done, led by Karen Bogus, but including the program finance unit that falls under Robbie and Finance, as well as the program administration group that falls under Elaine Melchiotti, who really helped design this 4 C's process, as well as our evaluation group. And as Barbara would remind me periodically, if you talk to those guys, they already know the problem programs. It happens enough, and it happens often enough. But we did it in a little more formal way. So we got together all of the people who worked with, this group of programs, or all of them who worked with that group of programs that had already been identified as needing a lot more assistance to operate just to a compliance level, much less making a difference for kids. So in the first year, when we really were trying to shrink laps, our budget personnel, particularly Senior Manager Diana Caro and Program Finance Senior Manager Stacy Gill, took the lead in that process. During the last several months, the next steps in the program portfolio have been taking place, and this looked beyond laps, but looked at evaluating outcomes as well as compliance, not just financial compliance, but other compliance, and how much effort it took us to keep them close to being in compliance. And so Karen has led that process with all the other folks that I mentioned. I don't think I mentioned Megan Seals, Director of Performance and Evaluation, and she and they would have been very involved. So Karen, and others are still in conversation with some of these programs, kind of tying down the details and having a better idea of what it will look like in the next fiscal year. And so they're not ready to present to you today, but I wanted to give you a sense that this is not something that, you know, they did in a week. This has been a months-long process that they will come to you and provide much more information in May. I also want, which is, you know, a really joy to be able to do, to point out, if you want to see it in your materials, you can, but where we list for information items, program and financial monitoring, and that's where we list programs that are on a CAP or a PIP. And it is my pleasure to tell you that Arts for Life beat their deadline and are no longer on a corrective action plan. Do we have? And those, yeah, Arts for Life folks just want to stand up and be recognized.
That's Jay Henson. They filled out a card. And that's Jay Henson, the executive director.
Come up and speak. And they got a pretty tough time at this board table, as at that point they deserved over a year ago, and it just seemed like they deserved a moment in the sun.
Testing, okay. Well, this is a great day for our organization and for everyone that participated in the process, because Beth, the things that you talked about, we are an example of how all of those things come together, and it can work. And on behalf of myself, my board of directors, my staff, my participants, and family and friends, we want to say thank you, thank you, thank you to the board of directors, to Beth for initiating this, to the staff at JWB, the amazing staff. And we just want to thank you for having the opportunity to support us and come together 35 years in the community, doing work with families and friends, and watching all of these youngsters and families grow up, mature, and go out into the world and do amazing things. It's important that you all were able to look beyond our faults and help us to come together and manage and work on different things that we needed to work on. And you made many suggestions that we took seriously. We brought in the ASO, and we worked with the management team at JWB, the fiscal team, and it was a wonderful process. You know, sometimes things like this occur, and you'll have people beating you down the whole time and saying you're terrible, get it together. But that is not the experience we had. Everyone was supportive, and they were always there, attentive, and they always reached out, and they provided expertise that may have been beyond what we had the capacity to have at the time. And so we've put all kinds of measurements into our program, and it's working. A lot of good stuff is happening, and we're looking forward to moving forward, keeping these things in our program and soaring and continuing to do better work and continuing to be a partner. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thanks. And then the last few things I wanted to share are personnel related. On March 16th, Karen Bogus was promoted to Chief Operating Officer. That became official. She now oversees program administration, community engagement, community collaborations, the Family Service Initiative, and performance evaluation. Karen has been here, how many years?
Almost 20.
Almost 20 years. She almost doesn't want to admit that it's been that long. But to say that she understands the ways in which all of these things work, and all the ways they worked in years past, it is an evolution, always would be an understatement. On March 28th, we bid a fond farewell to Senior Accounting Manager Linda Latorre, recognizing her achievements and expressing gratitude at a retirement event here in this room. And special thanks to Mike McCurrick for coming and representing the board. I think it became very obvious to folks who might not have known that Lynn had created friendships and robust working relationships with a lot of people. People were fighting for the microphone to say something nice about Lynn and share memories about that. And on Friday, May 9th, from 3 to 5, we will gather once again at JWB to honor the retirement of Dr. Barbara Morrison Rodriguez, JWB's Chief Evaluation and Innovation Officer. I think we've talked her into continuing to consult with us, as she did for many years before she came on staff. I will say this on the 9th, but I would want to say to you, Barbara's intelligence, backgrounds, and I don't mean just one, but background, willingness to, on the one hand, be very forthcoming and straightforward, but on the other hand, be willing to go with the flow if that's not the direction the board or I want to go. And that's a pretty special combination. So we have all gained, and I have appreciated the working relationship and the friendship. So thank you. And that, I think, is all I have.
Next, we have our informational items. Do we have, yes, Ms.?
If you'll give me one indulgence.
Yes, ma'am.
Because one of the things that I wanted to say is a lot of people know about my relationship with JWB in this current role. But the reality is I've been involved with JWB for almost 20 years. And that Karen was kind of a newcomer when I came on board. And my first relationship was with Jim Mills. I was here through Gay Lancaster. And then Marcy Biddleman brought me in as a staff member. Then I went out as a consultant. Then I met Beth and she brought. So actually, JWB and I are the same age. We were both born in 1947, okay? So I've had a long association. This is a very unique, amazing organization. I talk about it all the time. We are the envy of so many states. When I travel around to states and communities and I talk about JWB, people just cannot believe that we have such an entity and that, people are willing to use tax millage and invest in children and families in this way. So if there is one thing I would like to see, it's some kind of forum where we could promote not just JWB's programs, but its model to other geographic areas. If we had a conference or a communion of some kind where people came, how do you do this? How do you convince people, politicians and decision makers, to use tax money in this way? Can we adopt a kind of model that JWB has to disseminate that? So this is a state-of-the-art model that could be used in many, many other places, and I would love to see it, be scaled up in a lot of ways. And we have a lot of evidence that it works. We have excellent evaluation outcomes, fiscal outcomes. We have evidence that it works. So I just wanted to say that I've been with this place as long as it's been with me, and it's been a joy. It really has. Thank you.
Colleen, do we have any more cards? Open agenda, anything from the board? Next, we'll get to our milestones by Mr. Bartlett.
All right, We got March anniversaries. Julio Perez, 2 years, and Cheryl Miller, 10 years.
At this time, we will adjourn the meeting. Thank you for coming.